I see a man who wrote a great game story, which is kind of old school in itself, writing game stories for SI.com, and also the Fox Sports sideline college football analyst in general, who we love having here on the show. Fresh back from the Rose Bowl. Good to see you, Bruce Feldman. How are you, sir?
Happy New Year, Rich.
So that game last night was just spectacular. That was a fun back and forth. That was a lot of just fourth for Oklahoma. How did you see that game changing?
You know, it felt
night?
a lot, Rich, like last year we had an awesome Rose Bowl. Penn State, Saquon Barkley and Tracy McSorley going off against Sam Darnold and USC. Well, obviously what's different with this is there's way more stakes, involved because it's for a shot to win the national title. I was not surprised that Oklahoma jumped all over them offensively because I just think Georgia and that defense hadn't seen anything like Baker Mayfield in that offense. I thought Lincoln Riley did a great job as a play caller early on, especially in the first half. The one thing you looked at was, man, the Georgia running backs are running wild. At one point, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, those are their two running backs, were averaging 20 yards a carry. And that was like deep into the second half. It wasn't like in the first, two series. And so once they got rolling, I think Georgia made some good adjustments where they did some things up with their defensive line.
What did they do?
They did a lot more twisting and a lot more stunning that they hadn't done in the first half. Now, when I talked to the Oklahoma staff, they said, we saw it on film, but it's just they got a lot more aggressive, and we struggled to match their intensity. And I think if you're looking at Oklahoma 2 years ago, people forget this. They actually were leading Clemson at the half.
And Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and then they got blown out 21-0 in the second half, and Clemson goes on to play for the national title. This felt similar to it, but obviously Oklahoma got back in the game. They had the forced fumble for the touchdown. But at the end, I mean, a lot of credit to Georgia. That's their first time on this big stage. And I thought their true freshman quarterback, Jake Fromm, played really well.
Spectacular. I could not believe, we were fortunate. I took my wife and kids to the game. And we were fortunate. We were sitting in front of Terry Donahue, who is the
UCLA legend.
Yeah, I mean, his name's on the side of the building, based, where you can walk into certain parts of the stadium. And he could not believe, and we couldn't. Both of us, everyone around it. This kid was in high school 1 year ago. And he could not believe seeing that. He's like, this kid was in high school. He's a true freshman, right?
And he was not supposed to be the guy. Their starting quarterback, Jacob Eisen, who has a bigger arm and came in with probably even more hype, he was the true freshman quarterback who was a starter at the beginning of the year and then hurts his knee against Appalachian State. And then Fromm goes in there, plays well, and then basically just holds him off. And, again, I was really impressed. I expected the running backs to play well. I didn't expect him to be that as sharp as he was.
No mistakes. And you just when they were marching down the field to tie the game, to send it into overtime, it would have been a shocker to me if he made a mistake, because he was playing so mistake-free and just cool as a cucumber.
Remember, that's the kid who was like a Little League World Series hero, so he's got some backstory to him. The amazing thing about Georgia, just a little bit of a sidebar to this is, so 2 years ago they get Jacob Eason from Washington State, was a huge recruit for them. And then this year Jake Fromm goes in, so they have back-to-back starting quarterbacks who are true freshmen. And on top of it, now they have a even more talented kid coming in a few weeks, Justin Fields from he's a Georgia kid. A lot of people think he's the top-rated quarterback to come out of high school in like the last 3 years. He's going in there. People think he's going to end up overtaking both of them.
By next year? Like if Fromm could win the championship and then come back as a
competition's on. That's what Kirby Smart and Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator, are preaching. So
can you believe that, Brockman?
That's crazy.
Well, you probably not thrilled because he was committed to Penn State for a while, no?
Well, no.
He's
a Syracuse guy.
I'm Syracuse. I'll take anybody.
And by the way, congratulations on your school having something in common with Alabama now.
Beat Clemson.
There you go. Before we get to that, though, I want to just linger a little bit more on the Rose Bowl here with Bruce Feldman, who was there. You were witness to an interesting moment on the field after the game. For those who did not read your column and your story, and they should at SI.com or follow you on Twitter, which they should, at Bruce Feldman CFB. Recount what you saw.
So, in the course of the game, you kind of decide I was working with another writer from Sports Illustrated, and, he was going to work on something on Georgia. And so Baker Mayfield, the Heisman Trophy winner, he's a big story. So like, all right, I'm going to follow Baker, in this, kind of post-mortem situation. And you see him go down the line and congratulate and console all his teammates. And then he goes on the field to start approaching some Georgia players, and he's looking for Jake Fromm, and he's going up to different Georgia players. And then Davin Bellamy, who's a linebacker for Georgia, he's like in the middle of an interview, and you could just hear him from a long way away just screaming, humble yourself, humble yourself. And he must have said it, at least 3 times. And just, I asked Baker after the game, like a half hour later when we were in the locker room, I said, I know you get after guys and you get pretty emotional too. I said, did you hear that? And he said, oh, yeah, I heard it. But they won the game. They get the right to talk. And that's
well. I'm first of all, I'm glad to hear that he's the hey, walk it if you can walk it, regardless if he's the one who is on the business end of being walked upon. I guess to use that phrase.
Sure.
But did he put up a choke sign in the Georgia end zone yesterday?
He got asked about that, and he said that was directed towards his own teammates, saying you got to step on their throat. He said, obviously, when you get a team down, that's what you're supposed to do, and we did not obviously do it.
Did anyone ask Lincoln Riley about maybe going for it in an overtime? Because I didn't hear any of the post-game chatter.
He was asked that,
and what he said?
And he just said, there's a lot of stuff you always reevaluate. He really thought about it twice.
Because he even called the timeout to ice the kid. He had a lot of chances to. First of all, they called timeout. Then there was an icing of the kick. There was a lot of time for him to change.
And then
his
Georgia
mind.
doesn't have a timeout if they make their field goal block. The field goal team is on the field. So if they did something different, I would have loved. You remember like those cartoon bubble thoughts that you could have over the cartoon's head? I would have loved to have had that. I happen to be standing behind Bob Stoops, the great coach who just retired to give Lincoln the job.
So you were on the field for this.
Yeah, at the end, I'm right behind Bob Stoops, and he's about 6 feet away from Joe Castiglione, the AD. And Bob walks down to, maybe, 15 yards down to see how close it is. And Castiglione looks over and he goes, how close? He goes, real close, or something like that. And I'm just thinking, what is going through Bob Stoops' head right now? Because it's like, I'm thinking after that timeout, they're sending the offense back out on the field. But you're a rookie head coach. Can you make that decision, at that point? I think Lincoln Riley is a really aggressive coach in how he calls a game. But I just don't know. Maybe in year one, I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Hindsight is 20/20.
It is. I know. And Brockman, you even said.
Well, I was saying, yeah. Did anyone ask Kirby Smart if he thought of going for 2 when they scored with 55 seconds
on the other way
left?
down? I don't know if that got asked because I was down at that point. I'm in OU's locker room, so I didn't. I'm trying to remember because I looked at the transcript. If that was, I assume that probably was asked at some point to him.
Well, and I guess maybe the post-game conversations, like, okay, now you're taking on Nick Saban potentially because nobody knew at the time. How do you see that matchup going down now with Kirby Smart? Making the national championship.
They're obviously
game?
very similar. They've structured their program the same as Nick Saban did. Both have real physical run games. Kind of modest passing games. I think Alabama has better receivers, but what we saw last night from Alabama was different than what we've seen from Alabama at any point this year.
How so?
They dominated the line of scrimmage against a really physical team, and I think one of the big keys for Nick Saban was he throttled back on the practice and how physical they were, and kind of altered his, from what I was told, practice schedule because he wanted his guys to have fresh legs. In this day and age, and I'm sure it's like this even as well in the NFL, but one of the things that's come up a lot in the last 5, 6, 7 years in college football is with all this GPS monitoring of guys and their bodies at practice, coaches, a lot of them at least, have become smarter in how they prepare and how they practice, and so they don't run guys into the ground and their legs are fresh. And I think you saw that from Alabama, because at the end of the year, Alabama was a really beat-up team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they were playing at a different level than an athletic Clemson team last night. I'm not betting against, even though this is considered a home game for Georgia because it's at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I don't know if you can pick against Alabama with that experience and the way they looked last night.
Amazing if it all comes down to just Alabama again.
6 times in 9 years.
I don't think they're going to win.
You don't?
I don't.
Why are you convinced that Nick Saban's team will lose this game?
I don't know if they can score enough points. Georgia kind of showed a lot to me offensively last night, and I know Oklahoma's not really known as a defensive team, but they ran roughshod over Oklahoma last night, and I think they're going to be able to mix it up, and Fromm looks like he's the real deal.
That's good logic. That game felt like a Big 12 game. We do a lot of Big 12 games. Sure. That's what it felt like. And Georgia was able to play a Big 12 game.
And Alabama didn't score a lot on offense last night. I know Clemson's great defensively, but they didn't show me much on offense.
It just, man, when the lights come on and Nick Saban puts on that headset and against a guy and one of his proteges have never beaten him. Never. They're 0-11 against Nick when they take on the boss.
And even when you look at some of how they've done, like Mark D'Antonio is a terrific coach. He was under Saban at Michigan State. Would they lose 31-0 or 38-0 a couple of years ago?
It's going to be epic. But that kid Fromm, you're right.
Home game for Georgia. Do you think that has anything?
Can a true freshman beat Nick Saban in a national championship game on that defense?
Well, that's by the way, a home game for Georgia maybe, but it's not like there's not going to be a ton of Alabama fans.
I know, right, obviously.
But they'll travel. They're traveling.
And they don't even have to travel that far. It's not like they're coming. It's not like we're talking about UCLA fans here.
So I want to take a break and talk about the next level for a lot of these folks. Mayfield, is Darnold coming out? Don't answer that if you have a definitive answer on that. Rosen, Allen, all those guys. What's going on in my alma mater? Who's set up for success in 2018? That's with Bruce Feldman of SI.com and also Fox Sports, talking college football with Bruce, who was at the Rose Bowl last night. That's next. Your phone calls also still to come. A news update from Chris Brockman. Isaiah Thomas coming back tonight for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's all coming up here in hour number 3 on The Rich Eisen Show. All right, welcome back to The Rich Eisen Show. Bruce Feldman, fresh from the Rose Bowl, and you did a podcast last night.
I did late last night, somewhere at the media hotel, the downtown LA hotel. So it was
it's that time of year for you.
It is that time. It's a sprint. I do not. Your NFL stuff is like an 11-month a year deal now.
Yeah.
College football's not that way. Once past signing day, it throttles down significantly.
Well, I'm glad you came in here in person again. Check out Bruce Feldman's coverage on SI.com of the game last night and obviously throughout the rest of this week. And the national championship game set for 6 days from now against in Atlanta between Georgia and Alabama. All right, so let's get down to it. You were at the game last night. You're sitting next to our boy, Daniel Jeremiah, who's at Move the Sticks, who knows so much about all these kids, about what they could do for the next level. Is Sam Darnold, best you know, is he a done deal? Is he coming out? Or what happened against Ohio State gives him pause and he stays in?
Going into the Cotton Bowl last Friday night, I would have said Sam Darnold was 55-45 to stay. My hunch, and this is not from something anyone told me, it's the opposite now. I think it's 55-45 to go.
No kidding. So Greg Schiano and that defensive line for Ohio State shows him what could happen at the next level, and it allows him to think that he could go now? Because I honestly thought you'd finish the sentence saying now it's 70-30 he stays. Because it's not even a guarantee Cleveland takes him number 1 or the Giants like him. He might sit in that draft room for about an hour.
Well, that's at the next level, but he doesn't have to bring that O-line with him to the next level, hopefully for his sake. That struggled.
Okay.
The things that I've heard that people have some question is I talked to Clay Helton, I think 2 weeks ago, and he said they were going to get an evaluation back. They probably should have it now. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that they would say it's going to be a first-round pick. Now,
of course.
Do not like that he is careless with the football and needs to protect it better, especially with the fumbles. The interceptions is probably another thing, but the fumbles is a bigger concern. But like that he will take shots and throw into tight windows. Love his playmaking ability. He's got good size. Everybody likes his character. So he's probably, I would be shocked if he's not a top 10 evaluation. The question is, does he feel like the USC staff can continue to develop him, and can he make a lot of progress into 2018? Because the receivers are going to be a lot better because he had a bunch of young guys. They developed some chemistry. They will continue to get better. They'll lose a great running back in Ronald Jones, but it's USC. They have a really good one in Stephen Carr behind him. The O-line has been really underwhelming, and that's got to get better. And that was an issue this year, So, I thought there was a good chance he was going to stay. Now I'm not so sure.
Tell me about this kid from Wyoming that we're going to be hearing a lot about over the next two to 3 months. It's been proffered that Josh Allen is Wentz 2.0, and thus Cleveland will be all over him. What do you think?
Well, he's Wentz 2.0 in this regard. He's really big, and he's got a lot of tools in terms of big arm, athletic, can make a lot of plays. He also played for Craig Bohl and the staff that Wentz had at North Dakota State. Those guys moved on to Wyoming. Now and also like Wentz, he was a no-name recruit out of high school. Nobody was interested in him. Where I'm not buying the Wentz part is his accuracy is very spotty, and he threw a bunch of interceptions. He did it last year and he did it this year. And whenever he's played anybody who's halfway decent, I'm not talking about like Alabama defense. I'm talking about Oregon's defense, Nebraska's defense last year. He's really struggled. To me, again, and you'll hear a lot of evaluation because his film, he can do some amazing throws. I would be a little concerned just a lot about the decision making, but also about just the accuracy issues. And we'll see. I'm sure people are going to fall in love with him, but I could see it going. I could see it going the other way too.
Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Josh Rosen, he's gone, right?
He's gone. From everything I've heard, he's told people at UCLA he's leaving.
All right. So he's told Chip Kelly that essentially.
That I wouldn't say, but I think he's told. From what I've heard, he's told people around UCLA that he's leaving.
What are folks saying about his next level viability? Number one overall type?
Has the talent to be number one. It will be with meetings and how people feel comfortable with him.
Everybody seems to think that, he doesn't want to do this, that he's got rich parents, he doesn't need to do it. So why the hell has he been playing football? What does he even care then? It makes no sense to me that people really are going to pass on him because they think when it all comes down at week 16, do or die, it's like, I've got rich parents.
No,
is that really the
I don't think it's
here?
that part of it. I think so. This kid was a very competitive kid. He was a great youth tennis player. Transitioned to football, where he's played really well. He's got a great arm. He's very athletic. The question with him, he can make all the throws. Touch everything, sees it, will take shots. The other thing that I think is undervalued about him. I talked to coaches in the Pac-12. And they talk about how physically tough he is. They blitz the heck out of him. He keeps coming back. The question I think NFL personnel people will be sorting out is, how much does he love football is one part of it, but it's just how well will he fit in on the team as a leader? It's not whether is he a football guy or not. It's just he's a little different. He's a very bright guy.
Are you saying he's got Cutler in him? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying he's got Cutler. I don't know enough about Cutler's, what he was like at 21 years old.
Okay.
Now, there is a persona that gets attached to it. It's just I don't know how that sits with people. I don't think Josh Rosen is surly at all. I've dealt with him back when he was in high school back to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Talked to a lot of people. I just think it's like, will he fit in as a regular guy that sometimes you want as the quarterback?
It's crazy. This business is nutty, man. Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then there's the Baker Mayfield question. Don't
call him Johnny. I hope people don't go that route.
So many people are saying his skill set is Manziel-like, and that his ability to hit tight windows and be accurate, and he's height challenged. It's the same thing we heard about Manziel in terms of X's and O's. Forget are they off
a freewheeling system?
And then obviously Mayfield had a run in with the law, blah blah blah. But
here's the three biggest differences I would make between him and Johnny, and I spent a ton of time around both of them in college. One, you can say Baker is short. Baker's not small. Johnny is small. Johnny struggled to get to be at 200 pounds even when he was working, doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield's like a legit 215. He's a thick kid. He's just short. He's 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, with Johnny, the off-the-field issues were major. I did a quarterback book, and you can get into some of those. There were real issues. This isn't about somebody going out and getting drunk and being stupid, because I think there's a lot of college players who could get gonged for that, just people don't know who they are. Johnny's issues were significant, really significant. I don't think Baker's issues I would put in that category at all. And then the third thing is, and this is a big one, and I've heard this from a lot of coaches around, Baker loves football. Baker is ultra competitive. Johnny's competitive, but
you don't think Manziel loved football? Is that what you're saying?
If he loved it as much as, because I thought Johnny was a wild ride to be around and everything. Baker was different, just in like to be not prototype size. If you're Russell Wilson or Drew Brees, and the list isn't very long, maybe you can throw Case Keenum in, but he hasn't had the success those guys have had. You got to be off the charts. And Russell Wilson, I always heard first guy in, last guy out. Johnny was the opposite. Johnny was last guy in, first guy out. Baker Mayfield won't be that. So to me, that's where the difference is. I think it's, I can see why people are throwing that out because Baker plays with a humongous chip on his shoulder, and Baker plays in a non-traditional system, and he's not tall. But again, he's short, not small. I just think, if my team drafted him number 20 overall, I would not bet against Baker Mayfield.
Couple minutes left with Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. You've told me over and over again that you thought 2017 would be a step-back year for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan because of how much they lost to the NFL and that the offense was kind of starting from scratch. 5 losses, though, is not even close, remotely close. That's to a step back. That is a step in a hole type situation. You thought 2018 was going to be a big year. You still think so?
Well,
Michigan now?
2018, the season, not the beginning of it. But look, if and this is a big if they can get Shea Patterson eligible, he's the Ole Miss transfer, great arm, really quick release, very competitive kid. I think he's the best college quarterback Jim Harbaugh had since Andrew Luck. But you got to get him eligible. If NCAA doesn't clear him or he doesn't get a waiver, I don't know if they have it in Brandon Peters or Dylan McCaffrey.
Well, I think Peters, and it may be fair or not, I don't know. I think I think he played himself out of the spot. Personally, you got to see what these other young kids that are coming in that Harbaugh's. You got McCaffrey's younger brother. You got to see what's in those guys for sure.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's going to be a competition,
right?
But usually you do see a quarterback improve from the end of the regular season to the bowl game. There was none of it. None of it. Passing concepts, none of it against South Carolina.
We had them early on against Purdue. It was the game that Wilton Speight got hurt in. It's about a month into the season.
And he was in the stands, by the way. Did you see him?
I heard that. And I'm sure somebody's going to try to scoop him up as a grad transfer and think he can help him.
Right.
But they were awful in the red zone. And a lot of that was quarterback play. Some of it was offensive line. It was a new bunch of receivers. One of their best receivers was knocked out, Tariq Black, I think, early, like right around that time. So what you saw, I think, is a team that just didn't look like it had any identity on offense and a lot of confidence. And I think that starts with the quarterback play. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like last year, Jed Fish, I thought, had a really good job for UCLA, made a big difference in them. They were awful before he got there offensively, and they got a lot better this year. He left. He was a passing game coordinator at Michigan, and he came to UCLA, and Pep Hamilton, who'd worked with Jim Harbaugh at Stanford, he came in, and something just didn't click there, And I don't know what it's going to be like going forward, because I think they're going to have to make some adjustments because the rest of that league is not getting worse. Penn State, they're either going to lose Saquon, but the quarterback's still there. They're getting better. Scott Frost is coming in from Nebraska. He's going to make them better. Wisconsin's going to be good. Urban Meyer's going to be recruiting well. And Michigan State is really young, and they just won 10 games. Maryland's going to be better. So this isn't going to be easy. I still think, next year, this coming season is going to be a big year for them. But I'm curious to see what adjustments he's made because obviously it wasn't good enough there.
Bruce, thanks for coming on.
Sure.
I love our chats. You going to Atlanta this coming weekend?
I go in Thursday.
Okay.
It should be a interesting SEC battle.
Okay. I look forward to chatting with you right after, if we can. That's Bruce Feldman. Follow him at Bruce Feldman, CFB.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.